All right. If you haven't been paying attention to John Solomon, I highly recommend you pay attention to John Solomon because he's part of this task force that started with Odie and I, Bill Pulte, where they've been declassifying a lot of documents pertaining to, what happened during the Trump's first administration and leading up into the 2020 election. Oxford comma, which you see where they spelled things a certain way so as to avoid, they spelled Oxford with an E. So if you were to spell Oxford the conventional way, you could avoid FOIA request. Comma was spelled with a zero.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm actually looking at it because I did not catch that when I was looking at this stuff. Oh, it is Oxford. You don't even think bird. Okay, go on.
That's not by accident. It's not by accident. March Toll, which March Toll has to do, I think, with Jeff Sessions, and it had to do with, I guess, maybe was that the one that had to do with? No, Oxford comma was the firing of Comey.
Yes, but March Toll, you got it right. Jeff Sessions, May 2017. Potentially making false statements to Congress about Russian contacts, even though he had already updated the disputed testimony.
And he had recused himself. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
he had recused himself, but then they decided to investigate him. Basically, what you're seeing is that they've been trying to slow Trump down. They've been trying everything they do. Like right now,
Still
you have
happening now.
Oh yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Right now, you have Thune who calls for the Senate to go on vacation for 6 weeks, but they maintain some type of an open session so that Trump can't do any recess appointees, which has never happened. It didn't happen to Reagan. It didn't happen to Bush. It didn't happen to the other Bush. Nobody. And a lot of his appointees get held up. He's got a whole bunch of appointees held up that still haven't gotten in, which is this kind of stuff. They're just kind of trying to slow him down. And we've always felt like there was an issue there and felt like they were subverting him from inside. And people are like, dude, you're just a conspiracy theorist. You don't know what you're talking about. And then you come up with Operation Round River, where the FBI ran interference to cover up the Biden family crimes. You had 14 trusted confidential informants who would blow the whistle on the Biden family. And some of these, this is John Solomon's reporting, and he was saying that some of these confidential informants started in 2015 blowing the whistle on Hunter and Joe and Ukrainian Burisma kind of corruption, stuff like that. And, having to do with peddling influence with China. And starting in 2015, and some of these confidential informants had been working with the government since like 2008. So these weren't like guys that were showing up going, oh yeah, hey, these were people who had a relationship with the government, and as a result of that, they put together, I call it a cheat sheet of who was spreading Russian disinformation, and if you were spreading Russian disinformation,
that one's Round River.
Yeah, that one's Round River, and you were listed as a conduit. And if you were a victim of Russian disinformation, then you were considered a target, but basically anything that was considered harmful to the targets was Russian disinformation because they needed to suppress the truth about the Biden family because they needed to throw the 2020 election. And that's the thing, is that they needed to suppress all of the negativity, because there's no way Joe Biden would have gotten elected had the laptop, the reality of the laptop been revealed.
Absolutely. They deplatformed the New York Post over it. Like the New York Post, don't like the New York Post. Isn't it the oldest publication in America? I think it is. I think it's literally one of the oldest lasting publications in the United States, and they suppressed that. And Crowder used to flaunt this status. A good percentage of the voting populace would have voted differently if they wouldn't have voted for Biden if they knew that. People that didn't know it, and I forget where he got the stat. It's a fact. That alone is the most obvious, easy stat to pull out about voter interference, voter suppression, cheating in the 2020 election. But it's funny. Go ahead.
I was going to say, if you talk about that, that's where we can reference what we had talked about before, is some of the older folks might remember back in 2004, the Democratic campaign for the presidency was led by a guy named Howard Dean. And Howard Dean had one particular bad night where he got ahead of himself and he realized the momentum he had and the potential that he could be president. And he was on camera and he's like, we're going to go to South Carolina, we're going to go to Chicago, and eventually we're going to go to the White House. Yeah. And that killed him.
Well, let's take a second to look at that clip.
And you know something? You know something? Not only are we going to New Hampshire, Tom Harkin, we're going to South Carolina and Oklahoma and Arizona and North Dakota and New Mexico. And we're going to California and Texas and New York. And we're going to South Dakota and Oregon and Washington and Michigan. And then we're going to Washington, D.C. to take back the White House. Yeah!
So, now that you've seen this clip, I mean, yeah, you see that little teeny tiny piece. We said it's like the Wilhelm scream. It's like a bit now, but that ruined him at the time. And why did it ruin him? Because if you remember, the media was all over it. They shoved it down our face, and then they created, remember Jib Jab? Remember Jib Jab, which was like a South Park style animation bit, and it was like a 2-minute song, and it was like Bush and Kerry, right?
Mm-hmm.
So all of a sudden they have this guy Howard Dean who's getting a whole lot of momentum. So they killed him on one soundbite. Yeah! And instead Bush went up against fellow Skull and Bones member John Kerry.
Yeah.
You know, so
Controlled
if that little yak could kill somebody, the Hunter Biden laptop or a lot of the stuff that was suppressed in Operation Round River for sure would have obliterated Joe Biden's reputation.
Right. We were talking about this the other day, like same thing with Gary Johnson in 2016, where he had one bad moment. He forgot what Aleppo was or what happened in Aleppo. And next thing you know, all we hear is the phrase Gary Johnson Aleppo moment. And then he was out of the press. Look, that's all. I mean, they had 100% control of the media. So of course they're going to be able to steer whatever narrative they want to. You know, it's even funny that they got an op named Round River for this. They have to name an op just to get rid of to keep people quiet about Burisma. That should not be an op by the FBI, but they don't have that kind of power anymore. We started off talking about how like Donald Trump was draining the swamp, when he came out this time and he's talking about, obliterating the deep state. That's the exact words, right? So people don't realize when he's over in Iran, he's actually obliterating the deep state. All that stuff that's going on in the Middle East is pertinent. It is still domestic politics. But what's happening at home, look what the opposition has left. They don't have a lot because he took away all their funding with USAID, so riots didn't happen this summer. We have another podcast ready to go about that. The media is still so all they have is the media, which people don't believe anymore. Take the transfer he had to change planes the other day because of another threat on his life. So we did what CIA did their job, Secret Service did their job. They moved him quietly. They snuck him out in a catering truck. I think that's pretty fucking badass, man. Right? But what does CNN report? Oh, there was an active threat and he got off the plane and left all the rest of the press in harm's way. What a selfish scumbag. But that's the way they spin it. So they got that and they got Stahl. Notice it's not like lawsuits coming at him anymore. The lawsuits are just stopping his policies. So all they're trying to do is wait him out. That's what Thune seems to be doing. Maybe you can help me out here. I know this is a little off topic, but Thune's doing the stalling. He's clearly the head of the stalling. Trump is very, very happy with Thune. Why? What don't I understand? What am I missing? Any thoughts?
The only thing that I can think of, so I haven't heard that Trump is happy with Thune.
He usually comes out and says he's a great leader, blah, 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 something like that.
Yeah, I haven't heard that. The only thing that I can think of is that nobody really the Save America Act is just theater. Nobody really wants the Save America Act. Everybody knows that once the Save America gets, let me clarify this. The things that the Save America Act are calling for, everybody wants. But unfortunately, because of the way the system is set up, the second that it would get passed, it would get caught up in litigation and would not help in the 2026 midterm election. And what would happen is it gets caught up in litigation. The 2026 midterm election continues with no voter ID, mail in ballots, and all this stuff. You see what happened with USB sticks going missing, you know? The USB sticks going missing, which all of a sudden there's a Leah Hoops clip going around that's all of a sudden making prominence about USB sticks going missing in Delco back in 2020. But anyway, so you're starting to see all this cheating that's happening, and if the Save America Act gets held up, they're going to cheat, and then it's going to die. It's going to die because as soon as everything flips with the cheat in November, then all of a sudden they're going to impeach Trump, they're going to impeach Vance, and then they're going to put President Hakeem Jeffries in. We know this already. It's so obvious. Joy Behar is saying it on The View. Like, they're not even hiding it. Like, everybody understands this is what's going on. So the only way I would say that Donald Trump is complimenting John Thune is because John Thune is holding up the SAVE Act, because with no SAVE Act, then all of a sudden Trump can call the national election state of emergency.
Okay, now that would make sense. So it's strategic. So that way he's exhausted every option possible. So then by executive action, he can secure this round of elections.
Yeah. So now let's go back for a sec, because what you're seeing with the Round River and the March toll, and what was the third one? Oxford, you know, what you're starting to see, one of the other documents, and maybe this was related to Oxford, they were saying that Donald Trump choosing to not support Ukraine was proof that he was under Putin. So there's this duality once again, because he wouldn't.
We were talking earlier about juggling.
Yeah, exactly. So the fact that he is not supporting Ukraine means that he is definitely an agent of Putin, and it's that thin of information that they were using to call him a Russian disinformation guy. So what they're doing is they're laying all this down here and letting you see everything that was happening in Washington, D.C. Forget about Venezuela, forget about China, forget about South Korea, which is ground zero for elections now, is what I'm hearing. That's another one we could talk about. But anyway, forget about all of that. Just look at what happened in Washington, D.C., in our own backyard, and that is grounds enough for him. That's why they're dropping this stuff out there. They're slowly dripping it. You got Joe DeGenova down in Florida, who's just waiting, and I have a sneaky suspicion that everything they're dropping here is what's going to end up being in these indictments down in Florida. Apparently, there's a whole bunch of indictments that haven't been executed, and a whole bunch of people can be implicated in one indictment, and there's a whole lot of them on hold. So it looks like they're slowly releasing the information for all of us to understand what they're about to do.
Right. For the people that, just to close this all up, for the people that are waiting for or are black-pilled because where are the prosecutions? Where are the prosecutions? Different phases of things need to happen. We're still finishing up the disclosure phase, like the informational phase.
We're just starting. We're not finishing up the disclosure.
I think we're transitioning into action.
You have so much more disclosure yet to come.
True.
This is just the beginning.
I think, but we're starting to see some action. So I think we're at a crossover between disclosure and we're going to start seeing some action on some stuff. Hopefully, I mean, it depends on what kind of judges we got in certain places. That's a big thing.
There's the judge that they have, and without knowing, I think his name is Sullivan, but that might be wrong. He's a Bill Clinton appointed judge, and this was a guy who. And this goes into the Jeffrey Epstein stuff. The Jeffrey Epstein stuff. It sure seems like they did a whole lot of manipulating of the people to get them to demand, and then all of a sudden there's this bipartisan bill that says to classify the Jeffrey Epstein stuff, which Donald Trump could not sign. He could not sign it, not endorse it, but he signed it immediately, and then they turned it over to this Bill Clinton appointed liberal judge, declassified, and he's supposed to start releasing names. So you see how they're dropping things in certain ways,
Yeah, I didn't know that. That's an interesting conduit to test the waters on a Clinton appointed judge. Because if he releases that, hey, he's definitely going to open. But if he's like owned by Clinton, he's not releasing shit.
And from what I'm hearing, one of the DEF CON guys was talking about how what we're not seeing is that some of these releases are causing, like you got the Mandelson in England, and Prince Andrew. Like everyone's kind of quiet about that one, but there's also certain heads of banks allegedly that are starting to get taken away that we're not hearing about, but that's taken down some of these financial institutions in the background. So there's stuff that's happening that we're not hearing about, and slowly but surely they're dismantling that system.
Yeah. Well, that goes along with heading towards the central bank as well, which is a whole nother issue. It's all money. It's always money.